As one year comes to a close and a new year begins, this project ended meaning more to me than I expected. I came across a story that I had never learned in school, and once I found it, I really couldn't let it go. The more I sat with it, the more I realized how much it really matters still today. If you didn't catch it the first time, I wanted to give you the opportunity to experience it now, presented in 4K, the way it was meant to be seen. This is Erased, the Elizabeth Jennings Story, presented by The Color Between the Lines in partnership with Amplified Voices Television.
I often try to imagine what her mornings must have looked like. Elizabeth Jennings, a young black woman in New York City, 1854. Her family was not one of struggle, but of strength. Her father, Thomas L. Jennings, was a tailor and inventor, one of the first black men in America to hold a patent. He used his success to buy freedom for his wife and to help others do the same. Her mother, Elizabeth Cartwright Jennings, was a teacher and writer, a founding member of the Ladies' Literary Society of New York, where educated black women gathered to learn, read, and raise money to free those still enslaved. The Jennings family lived in a home filled with books, faith, and music, not survival, but vision. They believed in the power of the mind, and that knowledge itself was liberation. And on one warm Sunday morning in July 1854, their daughter Elizabeth dressed carefully for church.
Don't forget your gloves, Elizabeth.
Oh, I won't, Mama. I picture her that morning, sheet music tucked in her bag, fingers already rehearsing the notes she'd play at church. She wasn't thinking about making history. She was thinking about being on time. Outside, the streets are alive. Horses clattering over cobblestones, men calling out to sell morning papers, the smell of bread and dust in the air. In the 1850s, New York City's public transit wasn't run by one system. Instead, multiple private companies operated their own horse-drawn streetcars, and each company created its own rules for who could and could not ride. According to the Historical Society of the New York Courts, when the Third Avenue Railroad Company began operating in 1853, some of its carriages carried a placard that read, "Colored persons allowed," but those cars were rare, and they ran infrequently. Most of the time, black riders were allowed on general streetcars only at the discretion of the driver and conductor, and only if white passengers didn't object. The New York Historical Society notes that this kind of segregation wasn't unique to one company. African Americans were forced to ride on specifically designated horse-drawn streetcars, and attempts to resist these policies appeared only occasionally in newspapers. Segregation in New York wasn't written into law, but it was deeply woven into custom, practice, and daily humiliation, which is why, on that July morning in 1854, Elizabeth Jennings did what many black New Yorkers were forced to do. She boarded the first car available, hoping the conductor would allow her to stay. And that ordinary decision would ignite a legal battle that helped transform public transportation in New York City forever. I imagine Elizabeth sitting beside the window, her natural curls pinned neatly in her 1850s updo, her sheet music tucked carefully into her purse. Through the glass, the morning moves gently past her, the clatter of hooves on stone, the murmur of only a few passengers, the soft sway of the streetcar. She's only thinking of arriving at church on time.
Hold there, miss. You can't ride this car.
I'm on my way to church, sir. I have my fare.
She offers the coin, a small circle of silver catching the morning light, not as defiance, but as proof of belonging.
Colored riders have to take the other car.
Newspaper accounts later say she was quiet and respectful, that she made no disturbance, only asked to ride the same line any paying passenger could.
I'll take that.
He pockets the fare as if payment were permission without passage.
You have to get off now.
This car goes my way. I have paid my fare.
She rises, not to leave, but to be counted.
Driver, hold!
He leans out of the opening of the streetcar, signaling a policeman from the curb.
You've been told, miss. Off the car.
I've done nothing wrong. I have paid my fare. He has my fare.
Don't make a disturbance.
You will step down. Now.
I will not. I am bound for church.
What happens next? The street remembers in sound. Court testimony later confirmed it plainly. She was violently thrown out. It was for Elizabeth a heartbreaking moment. On the ground, dress torn and body bruised. Elizabeth was bruised, shaken, and hurting. She steadied herself and began the long walk to church. But she wasn't invisible. People along the street saw her distress, and soon the story of what happened on that streetcar began to move through the neighborhood, from one home to another, from the church steps to the pews. By the end of the day, word of Elizabeth's mistreatment had spread across the community, igniting outrage and a determination to stand with her. The congregation gathers close as word spreads. In pews and whispers, indignation turns to resolve. Her father, Thomas Jennings, listens in silence and then makes a decision that will echo across the city. That night, under the glow of an oil lamp, Thomas Jennings began to write. He pens letters, gathers statements, and reaches out to an ambitious young lawyer, Chester Arthur, a man who years later would become President of the United States. Within days, their story appears in the New York Tribune and the Frederick Douglass paper. The city begins to talk, some in outrage, others in disbelief that a black woman would dare to challenge the rule of the streetcars. But Thomas Jennings knew he needed more than headlines. He needed the law on his side. And both men, the seasoned abolitionist and the young lawyer, had much to lose. Jennings risked his business, his fortune, and the respect of a community that looked to him for leadership. Arthur risked his rising reputation, daring to stand with a black family against a network of powerful companies that literally kept the city moving. I imagine that when Thomas Jennings met with Chester Arthur, their meeting wasn't a polite exchange or a simple handshake, but a conversation heavy with consequence. There was something on the line for both men.
Mr. Jennings, I'll be candid. The streetcar lines aren't one company. They're a collection of private firms, each with its own owners, its own counsel, and its own prejudices. Even if we win this case, the others could go on refusing passengers they choose not to serve.
Then this is where we start. One line today, others will follow tomorrow.
You realize this could bring trouble for your business and for mine. Many won't care to see a colored man take a company to court, nor a young lawyer help him do it.
I know the risk, but I can't ask my daughter to stand tall if I shrink from doing the same.
Then let's see it through.
The two men shook hands, not as equals in the eyes of the world, but as allies in principle. That moment was courage meeting quiet defiance. It would take weeks, but they would have their day in court.
All rise. The Honorable Judge William Rockwell presiding.
Be seated. This court will hear the case of Elizabeth Jennings versus the Third Avenue Railroad Company. Mr. Arthur, you may proceed.
Your Honor, the facts are plain. My client, a woman of education and good standing, paid her fare in full. She sought no quarrel, yet she was seized, cast out, and left in the street, not for disorder, but for the color of her skin. If such treatment be permitted, then any person of color may be denied passage, not for conduct, but for complexion. And the rule of law becomes the rule of prejudice.
Your Honor, the conductor acted within his rights. The companies maintain discretion to preserve the comfort and good order of their passengers.
Comfort, sir, is not the measure of justice. The law makes no distinction in fare or coin. The right to ride is not granted by the whims of any man behind a fare box.
Gentlemen, this court reminds you, the question is not one of sentiment, but of law. The statute is clear. Persons of color, if sober, well-behaved, and free from disease, possess the same rights as others to public conveyance.
Then, Your Honor, we contend that the conductor was within his duty to determine what best ensured the peace of his passengers.
And I contend that peace built on humiliation is no peace at all.
Enough. The matter rests with the jury. Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We find for the plaintiff, Miss Elizabeth Jennings.
Damages in the sum of $225 with costs.
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection is noted and overruled. The ruling stands.
No cheers followed, only the sound of relief. Restrained and reverent, for Thomas Jennings, this victory was only the beginning. One line had yielded, but others would resist. In the years that followed, he would bring suit after suit until every streetcar in New York opened its doors to all. Change came slowly, but it came. After Elizabeth's victory in 1855, the Third Avenue Railroad Company became the first in New York to open its cars to all riders, regardless of color. Other lines resisted, and so her father, Thomas L. Jennings, co-founded the Legal Rights Association, organizing lawsuits and peaceful challenges against every remaining segregated company. By 1865, 10 years after Elizabeth's stand, every public transit line in New York City was desegregated, the result of steady legal pressure, community organizing, and courage that refused to fade. And in 1873, the fight reached Albany, when the New York State Legislature passed one of the nation's earliest civil rights acts, outlawing discrimination on public transportation statewide. So now when you see black and brown children boarding the subway today, they may never know her name, but every ride they take in freedom carries a piece of her story. We tell these stories not to reopen wounds, but to trace the strength beneath them, to remember that courage is often quiet, held in the small acts of defiance. History doesn't fade, it just waits to be remembered.
Well, thank you for taking the time with me and for being part of this journey as Erased continues.